So, guys, tell me a bit more about Indian Mynah. Like, you guys are an instrumental post-rock band from Cape Town.
Yes. Yeah, that sounds like a lot when you put it like that. Yeah, no, we're just a bunch of very, very close friends who just really love playing instrumental music together. We've all been in like kind of associated bands like around for like before we kind of met and made it a real thing. But yeah, just love kind of writing that instrumental vibe. Yeah, and as I said, just four of us, just really close friends that just love playing shows. So that's kind of how the core of it started.
And I've got two of you here at the moment, right? So it's
Yeah. Matthew,
James and
the,
Matthew.
you've got the guitar section with you.
Oh, okay, cool. So being a guitarist myself, that makes sense. We'll have a lot of common ground there. And so you guys saying it's a bunch of close friends. You guys have been doing music prior to being in a band together. How long has Indian Mynah been going?
Sure. I think 2014 we started, eh?
Yeah.
Like at least the four of us. Originally we had a different drummer. And then the four of us were jamming since 2014. And then I think our first show was only a year later, or so 2015. I think 2015 was the actual year that we
Probably, yeah,
reacted.
made that decision to like kind of really go at it. Um, as the four of us, yeah,
Yeah,
in
because it was
2015. I'd say about seven, you could call us 7 years old, maybe.
Yeah, I suppose it was also at that point where, when you start a band and you don't really know when to officially call it a band just yet, you're just like,
Yeah.
oh, well, we're doing this thing. And next thing, I think we just played a show and like, okay, cool, I guess we're a band now. And then the rest is history from there. And then,
Yeah.
yeah.
I think it felt quite official when we kind of actually made that choice to start our process of writing our first album. And I think that kind of process of like, yeah, we want to play cool shows and stuff, but I think that like decision to start committing to certain things like that kind of brought in quite a beautiful energy between all of us because we could really like kind of listen to the music from a distance and kind of like have this like sweat of pushing towards this album. And I think we really came out of that process knowing a lot more about ourselves as a whole and how the sound is without you being part of that performance, and kind of really wanting to make that decision to push that as far as we could now that we had this like kind of different world to play with. So I think that kind of ramped up the like kind of seriousness of the band, I guess.
How long had
Yeah.
you guys been together when you started recording an album? Like just to get the timeline there.
So I think we were probably kind of playing for what, like about 2 years or 3 years.
Yeah.
And we'd played the songs like for quite a while, but I think we'd been like writing them on and off depending on what kind of shows we were playing at. And we always wanted to play like and make an EP, and we'd have like all these different kind of songs and ideas. But after about, I'd say, yeah, about like 2 or 3 years, we had kind of really understood what kind of set and what kind of sound that we wanted to go for. I mean, in the beginning, we had like some songs that did have quite a bit of vocals on them, and Johnny, the bassist for the band, he used to play like acoustic in one of the songs and sing, and then we kind of like started shaping it more towards these like bigger live shows with just like that purely instrumental drive. So yeah, that's the process, is how it started, I guess.
So
Yeah.
a pretty like short space of time to just like an album is a daunting task. Like I'm pretty impressed you guys just dove head first into that.
Yeah, it was, I mean, we actually, I think the album it was over 2 years that no, it was longer because we obviously wrote songs earlier as a band, and then we did like sort of recordings with friends and students and all of that. And I suppose that was also something that we learned was that cool, this is how we want to sound in studio versus live, and well, trying to get the studio and live sound to try and sort of sound similar. And obviously, we've got a whole bunch of demos of songs, early versions of songs, which are on the album now. But it was only when Matthew got his studio together. When was it? At the end of 2018?
Yeah, that was 2018. Yeah.
Yeah, as soon as Matt got the studio, we were pretty much in there, 3 to 4 times a week practicing, and we decided let's try and do our first album ourselves. Matt's an incredible sound composer and engineer, and it just made sense for us to try and do this ourselves, which was a big learning curve as well. And so that was the start of the first album, was sort of like a 3-year process of like trying to get these songs the way we wanted them to sound.
No, that's sick. Like, I find it funny how like every artist in the beginning has had some experience with being recorded by students. It's always like you're new to it, they're new to it, everyone's new to it, and it's just everyone's trying to figure out what they're doing.
Yeah, it's highly recommended. I think as a band, you definitely need to go through that process. I think it also, I mean, if you've never recorded before, a click can be quite a terrifying thing to suddenly learn, especially for a drummer, But that's also something we can touch on later, which is interesting.
Everyone's a musician until the metronome comes out.
Yeah, no, totally. And then also like you think your tone sounds good when it's super loud, and then you hear it back with the rest of the band and see how much work there is to be done. But I think that's also the good thing is we had a lot of time in our opportunity of that studio where we had rented the space out, and we were using it for a lot of different reasons, but we kind of just as a band we were in there like early every morning, like left like late at night, like just using that space to record, be like experiment with anything we could. And I think that really like got us to know what it was like to sit down and work together, and like use it to like take it seriously without the fear of like a producer or a sound engineer who was outside of that like little circle that we'd created. And I think that was something we're very lucky with, because now we know what we want and we get other people to come and record with us and stuff, and that'll kind of touch on with the new album that we've finished now. But we now just kind of really know what we want out of the other people and what we want out of ourselves, which we were very lucky to find out with our first album.
Yeah, like I mean, having your own sense of identity before having other people influence you is incredibly important. I can understand that.
Yeah, it worked for us.
And it was just a fun way and different way, at least for myself, to do it that way. Playing in bands before, it was always like cool. When you go into a studio, you're quite pressed for time, and this is what needs to get done, where we had the opportunity to be like, okay, cool, I actually hate what I'm playing, let me quickly rewrite something or try and swap out a different pedal, or just have that freedom and time to do it was great.
We even had those like kind of decisions like almost like a week before we wanted to finalize the album, like where we had heard these songs so many times, and there would be a point where like James or I would be like, I'm just not happy with that part, or like Kenan would just be like, no, I can do that performance better. And we're sitting there thinking we've got this end product, and to like go in and like fix things even at that stage, that like that was a luxury that I don't think we would often get.
A luxury, and to a point where like it could delay things, and almost too many cooks in the kitchen.
There was some nitpicking.
Yeah, nitpicking, definitely.
No, that is definitely a leisure sort of thing, because not only would you be costing you money if you're doing it through a studio to make those kind of adjustments, that person is going to get pissed with you. That engineer is going to get that guy is going to get pretty pissed with you over that space of time.
Yeah, totally.
Luckily, we just dealt with each other. We know that we're all pretty picky people, and we like things to sound a certain way. So that was like, I suppose, like a non-negotiable, like going into it.
Yeah, I think they were all, even if there were arguments, they were constructive ones.
Exactly.
Like it never got to a point where it was not like that. Yeah, I think that's the one thing you find in an instrumental band. And I was joking about it the other day. Like, it's quite easy as an instrumental band because we don't have to have the ego of like a one person. We know that we're like an outfit. And often when you potentially get a lead singer or someone like that who kind of wants to make it a one-way thing, we are all constructive to the point of what the bigger schema would all sound like, and we're lucky with that.
No, that's important because those kind of differences can end a project like well before it's into something. And so you guys say like the shift to being instrumental, like purely instrumental, was sort of natural over time, where you guys had vocals and over time you just shifted more and more towards like being completely instrumental.
I don't think we thought about it really that much.
Yeah.
I think, to be honest, we just started sharing a lot of music that we loved. And a lot of the music that we loved really lent itself to being able to play like a song that has like a 7 minute instrumental part, or like listening to songs like Mogwai, who James like kind of gave me as a band that I'm obsessed with and always will be. And I think those kind of conversations always just came from, we just played what we liked and what we were capable of. And just that kind of, we just always gravitated to that instrumental feeling. And yeah, just organic, I guess.
No, that's cool though. Like I was listening to you guys' music and it's interesting. It's really interesting. Like that with the instrumental bands, it's really like there's a really difficult balance to strike something where it is, how do I say, it doesn't lose like its value in terms of being interesting to listen to. And I can always respect an instrumental band that can keep, especially me, because I'm really easily fucking distracted, to keep my
Yeah.
attention for like the entirety of a song. Like, oh, cool, this is really interesting. It sounds like you guys put a lot of time into these sections, these different parts.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose the fun thing about playing in this band is that it's an open canvas. You don't have, again, like how Matt mentioned, there's no vocalist that has to sort of be in front. Like you kind of relying on melody and maybe sometimes not melody, maybe just if it's something percussion or something like that, that just feels fun and in the moment. Because obviously the songs aren't, a lot of the songs that we write, some of them are, riffs that we come up with, bring it to the band and we work it together. But the whole core sound is all written live. And that is the fun part about being in Indian Mynah, is that, there's no rules around, what needs to happen where. And obviously it's, if you've got an idea and you want to bring it and it works, then that's cool. And a lot of the time it comes out really naturally, which feels nice. Nothing feels forced. It's not like, hey guys, we're gonna like write a song specifically like this, or we're gonna use, you can try that. You can be like, cool, I've got a riff, it's sort of based on something that influenced by this. But once you bring it into the room with three other guys who listen to something completely different, it's always interesting and fun to see what comes out.
Yeah, it feels like a rush almost, because it's like
Yeah.
one point where we have this like idea that's kind of like floating around for like a few days or weeks or whatever. But then as soon as everyone like kind of aligns to this idea of where this kind of the real like story of the song is going, we all get really excited. And I think the writing process from all of us getting on the same train to the song being finished is a really quick turnaround. Almost like we can end up like finishing the song in a day or two, because we're just so excited by kind of having that narrative work. It's almost like writing a sentence, but I guess it's just, we get so excited that by the time we feel like it's finished, then yeah, that's it. So
I agree with you in terms of that being exciting because like you said, it's you'll bring something to the party and everyone perceives it differently. Everyone on the band has a different perception of what they're hearing, of where they think it should go. And it's so
Yeah.
it's so rewarding to watch that idea kind of take hold and evolve as everyone gets involved with, adding, hey, like I have this idea that can work with this or going into this or moving forward, and the finished product ends up being something so much more. And that's just the beauty of working with other musicians and working with other people.
I think that's kind of where the as you were saying, like the keeping things interesting, like the attention span of the song. I think that's kind of like our like what does the song need and what does the song not need? And I think like that's kind of like what is keeping our attention is kind of what is keeping our excitement about like what we're feeling about where the song is going. And as soon as we feel like it's done, it's almost like that attention span doesn't need to go on for any longer.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's I'm assuming that also like defines the length of your songs as well, because you some of your songs are quite long, and I'm assuming that
Yeah.
it would just go on for as however long you guys be like, well, this is just too much fun to carry on. Like to stop now. Let's just keep going.
We like long songs.
Yeah, we like long songs, and it's yeah. I suppose I think we often do. We're all playing the song. If it's a new song, we're like, okay, well, now when does the song finish? There's just so much more that you can add onto it, and it does come down to like, okay, cool, the whole attention span thing. We're like, cool, well, you can go back to this part or do it as a new part, but then you feel shit. Well, if we're feeling that we getting a little bit lost, or we feel that it's like, okay, cool, it's time to like, slowly end things or whatever. It comes naturally. It's not like, okay, guys, let's stop here. I suppose it's whenever Kenan just stops playing drums. That's when the song ends.
Yeah.
In terms of your live performances, now obviously like with COVID easing up and pretty much a lot of the restrictions being gone, touch wood that the whole thing about a sixth wave really doesn't take hold into anything serious. How have you guys been finding things opening back up and being able to perform more? Have you guys been performing more? What's been happening?
We have been playing obviously like respectfully depending on whatever the wave was, but I think we kind of started off by trying to like obviously during the COVID time we spent a lot of time writing our second album and chatting to each other, spending a lot of time together, and we were almost kind of like welcoming the idea where there wasn't that much other distraction, and we wanted to write stuff that was quite uplifting or energetic, and we were quite excited to go out and perform as soon as things lifted up, and we wanted to do it properly. So I think one of the first ones after the big COVID kind of like lockdown like release was the Blackjack show.
Yeah, we did the show with Blackjack's Daisy Jones.
Yeah, and like just being able to come out from this like very weird experience of lockdown to start attaching ourselves to things that we really found important, like playing very special shows like that, and also wanting to play again in front of like different audiences. We kind of open ourselves up to a lot of venues and stuff that we're willing to kind of, I don't know, I guess just try something different. And we've just been trying to play as much as possible, and it's actually, yeah, I feel like it's worked really well for us.
Yeah, navigating the whole COVID thing was obviously, like Matt said, like within respect to the wave and the regulations at the time. I think we did during COVID, I can't remember if it was 2020 or I think it was 2021. We did a small tour to Joburg where we played. I think it was the first time that we went to level 2 or 3. I can't remember, but that was a very special time to be able to actually get in a room with people and play music again. But in terms of COVID and coming back, something that's obviously come back with that is now when you go out every weekend, there's just so much more bands playing, which is great. If anything, it's also just helped us to be a little bit more selective over our shows in the sense of not overplaying and, doing things like that and planning around that, being a little bit more strategic to not do the same show over and over, like Matt said again, just, trying to chat to a venue about doing something a little bit more special. So it's been great. We've been patient with the whole returning of shows, and yeah, if anything, it's that we've learned from it is that we're keen to play live. We're just being more selective over the live shows and trying to make it more special because obviously people are being more selective of going out and spending money and all of that stuff. So
That also being said, the one thing that's really cool is the audience of people that come to your show. I think like before COVID, when everything kind of almost felt invincible, you could kind of repeat things, but also people would just go to venues for shows,
yeah,
which I mean was cool and had its time. But people that have been coming to our shows after COVID have actively been extremely interested in engaging in the shows. And I honestly think that some of my favorite shows have been because of those interactions of people wanting to come and watch live music, experience it. Kids that have probably been going through lockdown, like in their time in their lives where they've wanted to experience live music, like you 18, when you go into this lockdown, you come out as 20, and you're really keen to kind of experience what live music is like as a student. And we see some of that energy, which is a fresh, new kind of energy.
yeah.
That has been absolutely beautiful, and there's a lot of weird purpose to it. So I think that's from what we've experienced other people at our shows, like we've absolutely loved it more than anything to kind of see that like real natural enjoyment of the show.
It's actually something I never considered. That there were guys, there were kids like 18, and sort of in the
Yeah,
like in the prime of going out and partying to bands and whatnot, and that being in the middle of lockdown and not being able to do so. Like I'd never actually
Yeah,
considered that perspective of it. And it makes sense now why I'm actually seeing so many new faces, like especially in Durban where the scenes are really small and really tight knit. Like when there's new faces, you know it because you you see the same people all the time.
yeah,
And
yeah.
seeing so many new young faces like in the scene, like so much fresh blood, like guys wanting to make music, new guys just wanting to be a part of the scene. And yeah, like that's great. It's actually an eye opener. Thanks for that.
no,
Yeah.
definitely. I mean, imagine a 17-year-old being during lockdown and suddenly discovering a local band and turning 19 and finally getting the chance to go and see that. I think it's something beautiful that we've got this new wave of like young kids that have been cooped up. And again, like how music when it goes through these cycles of like, DJs were a thing, electronic music was a thing, and I feel like there's been this cool little rise in like, you know, indie rock bands and even bedroom producers and all of that, just making music exciting again. And I think we're definitely in like a new era of new musicians coming up, new crowds, new everything. So it's definitely exciting.
I hope it carries on being an upward trend. I love seeing new artists. I love seeing new bands. I love seeing like obviously with the concept
Yeah,
of the show, you guys understand that like myself and Asipa are like we love local music to no end. So like, let's be honest, doing music in South Africa wasn't easy even before COVID.
no, true, definitely. And I think that's, yeah, I suppose for us as well, like we've been very lucky and privileged that we can make music and keep it fun, and it's not necessarily a job. We always say that, like, yeah, for me personally, music is a free psychology, or seeing, or free therapy. It's great to be able to just get in a room with your friends and just make the most music. It's not necessarily a pressure for us, and yeah, it's been nice that this thing has sort of worked out for us in a way where the band is sustainable to be able to tour, do records, do shows, and just keep the whole thing alive.
And have you guys always been based in Cape Town?
Yeah, we all started. Three of us grew up in a small little town called Somerset West, and Matthew is, where exactly in Joburg are you from?
Where in Joburg am I from? I was born in Sandton.
Saint.
Yeah, came here from Johannesburg to study in Stellenbosch and then moved to Cape Town where I met these boys.
No,
Yeah.
that's fantastic. And like between being in Durban, like honestly, we always look with envious eyes at both Cape Town and Joburg in terms of the music scene.
We can chat about the we can chat about the Durban music scene. That you guys used to have an amazing scene. I mean,
Yeah,
you still do. You still have great bands. It's just it's the sucky thing that no matter how many great bands you have, you've got to have a venue that works and that's willing to
Yeah,
obviously make that happen. And obviously, the Winston pub, um, which I think's closed down now.
yeah, closed down middle of this year sometime.
Yes, yeah.
Unfortunately, Matt just, had to moved on to different things in his life, and we don't know if the guys who have bought it are gonna do something like alternative with it, or do something else
Yeah.
with it. But there are a couple of new places, in KZN, doing their absolute best. There's a couple of places that have opened up their doors now to live music and are sort of filling that vacuum, and it's
mm,
Yeah.
really good to see a lot of guys trying to make things happen.
If anything, it's just something that needs to. I always say that music is always great when, like, in high school. I mean, this was for me, like, high school bands are so important. Playing when you're young, getting people at gigs when they're young, and realizing how amazing it is to just like go to a gig, listen to music, and just see that sort of grow from there. So, I mean, it's like shows, like all ages shows. That was a great way to, like, for me at least, to see the bands that I got into the music scene when I was 16 years old, like seeing all these big bands like Fuzzy-ish and yeah, it's it's definitely something that I know Durban has the potential to do, because you do have a record of some amazing bands. I mean, Sibling Rivalry, that was one of my favorite bands growing up, and they were Durban based.
The fact that you mentioned Fuzzy Gish. I'm not actually originally a Joburg boy myself, to be honest. I've been living in Durban now for about 6, 7 years. But Fuzzy Gish, man,
Okay.
that was one of the bands that I remember seeing as like a teenager slash like, early 20s, and being like, holy
Yeah,
fuck, this standard of music exists. And I
exactly.
like that, but absolutely blows my mind.
we would love to play Durban again though.
Yeah,
We're
we'd love to
keen.
come back to Durban.
There's a couple of places that you guys would most definitely be well received, and because like for the type of music that you guys make, there's definitely a market for it in Durban. Um, there's a couple of guys you can speak to who I know for a fact are organizing a lot of shows this side, and they're bringing guys from other parts of the country in and getting together some local guys to support them. So like you can definitely
Yeah,
reach out to
please.
these guys. Um,
Yeah, we're going to be touring, I think, from like mid next year. We're going to be putting a whole tour together to tour the new album. So definitely want to come back to Durban.
Yeah,
I think our last show was we played
Pablo Honey.
Pablo Honey. Um, yeah, that was great.
We
That was
played
very
we
cool.
played that show the weekend before lockdown
Oh yes, yeah,
because we toured. And that was the craziest thing. We had like a full like South African tour, which was incredible. And our last show was in Durban, and then James and I actually drove back from Durban to Cape Town, the coastal route back. And when we got back, everyone had to go into lockdown for like 3 months. And we were actually quite relieved because we were like, I don't want to leave my house because we've been touring for so long. But it was actually, yeah, so yeah, that was the last time we played there, which is
what
crazy.
a what a
yeah,
rewarding way to go into lockdown though. Like,
Yeah,
it's like, oh, you know what? This is fine. I've just come from like roaming the country for a couple of weeks. This is good. This is
yeah.
okay. I can deal with this.
yeah.
We saw enough scenery to last us a few months being locked up at home. It was good.
Yeah, that's great. But it's places like Pablo and like Pablo Honey and stuff that are really like the core of the Durban music scene at the moment. These small places, these are like unassuming venues that are just doing whatever they can to keep the music scene in the country or in Durban alive. There's always that hardcore, that dedicated fan base for anything, really.
Yeah, man, it's great. Yeah, tell the dudes to get hold of us. We'd love to come back to Durban, and it'll be good to be back in Durban as well. I'm actually a Shark supporter, so it would be good to go to the Shark Tank. Love, yeah, we can do Shark Fest.
I
I'd
don't
love
know.
to
I
play.
don't know if I can organize that, but
Listen here, you just gotta check the old phone book there.
Anything's possible.
Oh, that's sick. I'm quite excited. And then the newest single, how do I say it? Gestalt.
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 No, it's
Yeah.
Afrikaans. Okay, my bad. My bad.
It's actually German.
Close enough.
Next.
Yeah.
And does that? Oh well, geez, well, I'm fucking tongue-tied today. Sorry, lads. Does that sum up sort of like the direction of the album itself, or is every song kind of its own journey, exploring its own feelings?
Yeah, it's quite different. I think, for example, Gestalt, you hear there's like sort of a drone, sort of a drone that begins. All of us like love electronic music, and we've always wanted to we actually have always been messing around with like Kennan's SPD and samples, and Matt also writes some really cool on the side. He's got another project called Oscar Parkmore, which you should definitely check out, but it's like quite synthy stuff. But yeah, the question, going back to each song is sort of different in its own sense. I think we all we wrote them in sort of different stages, some during lockdown, some after lockdown, but yeah, they're all pretty different.
Oh, that's sick. And you guys have a release date as of yet, or?
25th of November.
Oh, sick. That's soon. Hell yeah.
Yeah, end of the month. The new album's out. We're releasing it digitally 25th, and then like Matt mentioned, we've got vinyls that are coming from Belgium. We've got tapes that are coming from Pinelands.
That's so cool.
No, we've decided to really have fun with this one, and you'll see. I'm not sure if the artwork is out yet, but the whole sort of theme around the album is called "The Boys Scribble Like Mad." Just going back to us being in a room and being live, the actual album artwork's a photo of us with our instruments, showing that the whole thing it's an ode to like a live sound, as well as like those old vintage and older bands that used to have these photoshops where they're posing with their instruments. We thought we could sort of like play around with that whole look.
I think we enjoy the idea that like, I mean, these days there's just so many different like options for recording. Like you can be like super mathematical about it. You can always like double up on guitars. You can like add all of this production to it. And I think in a world where the opportunities are the options are endless, what we really like about ourselves is that we can kind of sit in a room, turn on our amps and play them as is. So that's kind of how we recorded the whole album. It's how we kind of advertising it, because we're keen to take it on the road. And the next step after South Africa would be to kind of start moving towards looking international for that kind of space to play around. So yeah, that's kind of what the whole idea and the manifest and the kind of direction is for this one.
Have you guys played outside the country before?
No, we haven't. We've traveled together though. We did a trip together in 2019 to Spain and Portugal to go to a music festival. We kind of to go watch our favorite bands, and sort of treated it as like a nice little building and research on how international bands sort of how it works,
Yeah.
how it
That's
sounds.
cool,
So,
though.
yeah, it was great, man. It was a big eye opener that, at least from my side, I realized that coming back to South African bands, how we can actually compete on international stages. You know, we saw a lot of bands that were great, and some that was sort of like meh, you know, average, and it sort of just, we came back with this exciting feeling and of knowing like, well, actually it was when we came back from that trip together, we released our first album, and then that just sprang in like a new life and energy into the whole band itself. So it was, yeah, it was really cool to sort of go through that journey together as friends as well.
I think just knowing that, going there and knowing that it's achievable, and the amount of work that we put into what we do now, is that if we would go over there, like we would be doing it with a sense of enjoyment of the work that we put in, not really being intimidated by it, but just being ready to share it. And I think that it was good because it gave us that kind of idea that wanted to be that energetic professional band that could literally just tour anywhere. And yeah, that's kind of what we're still running off now.
Yeah.
Now, where would you guys go if you like? Where would be your destination if you guys could just go overseas and play? Like, which would be the first country that you would hit once you leave SA?
Sure. I suppose we've always like, I think Europe's been like a target just because it's the amount of venues and the sort of circuit there, in order to like, you know, you can tour like a circuit where you're playing country to country, and there's just so much, and there's a huge love for you know, rock music and indie, and you know, just like guitar music in general in those countries. For example, when we were at the festival, we went to Mad Cool. We'd go to the electro tents, and there would be maybe, you know, maybe 2,000 people versus, you know, seeing a rock band in another tent, which would be completely full. Where here it would be sort of the other way around. So we know that, you know, our whole sound would work in Europe. So I mean, I suppose Portugal would always be fun.
Portugal always would seem like a cool start off point.
Yeah.
Europe is a really cool one. I've always wanted to do Japan as well, just because
Japan would be great.
it just seems a lot of like really exciting. I think the cool thing about Europe, though, is, as what James was touching on now, is in South Africa, the reason why it's so distant between everywhere is just because how far it is and how difficult it is to get to another city. When you're in Europe, like to play a show in Belgium and then Amsterdam, and then these are day trips to go play at different places, and that kind of like forced to like kind of just keep moving there. There's just so many cool options to be had, and I think that for us is what we would really want to do next, is just try and like play as many places in the shortest amount of time as possible.
To just do things together as friends, you know, like for example, I can't imagine anything better than to go to like Spain and Portugal with, you know, 3 of my best friends and just play music, you know, in a sweaty little venue somewhere. You know, that just makes it just so much more exciting.
No, definitely. Like that's the thing about like being in a band though. Like there's so much more to it than just, you know, making music. You can just have the fucking time of your lives with a whole bunch of your best mates, because that's that. I don't know. There's just no other experience quite like it.
Yeah, man. You know, if you know what it's like playing in a room with your best friends. It can also be. I mean, luckily for us, we pretty much all we don't fight. Touch wood. We all sort of get each other, and it's really special. You know, it's also just because we are at an older age now, where, you know, people are settling down. For example, Matt and Johnny have kids, and you know, it's a great excuse to be able to get in a room with like all your friends and do this thing together. You know, despite like what's happening in life, it's a real special thing to have. And I think that's also another driving force for why, you know, we've been around for as long as we have. It's something we love doing.
And like being an instrumental band, you guys have spoken about like some of your inspirations and stuff. You know, you've mentioned that, you know, there's a lot of guys. What are you two as guitarists? Who are your inspirations in terms of who you guys listening to kind of on repeat and drawing inspiration from at the moment?
Yeah, I mean that's always an interesting question. I mean it's like inspiration wise, like I love everything. Anything that sounds cool, like a cool melody. I don't necessarily try and like pinpoint something and say like, cool, I'm gonna try and write it like that or anything. But I mean, if it was to be, I suppose the root of my inspiration is from like my young years of loving punk music and heavier music. And I suppose if there's something that comes along that's interesting and exciting, whether that's within the punk realm or not, that's kind of like I suppose an influence or that gets me excited. Yeah, I can't really pinpoint exactly one like another guitarist or another band. I suppose it's like I suppose just the sound that you get like I love anything that sounds nostalgic. I suppose that's sort of an inspiration. I like nostalgia.
So I guess what I really like is I think James and me is both being guitarists and both loving the nostalgia kind of like value that you can get kind of like listening to older music and also new music where people are kind of touching on those themes. I do love the nostalgia like aspect, and I think for me it's, as James said, it's not really necessarily a guitarist or anything like that. It's kind of more of just like the feeling that that song gives you or the place that that song kind of puts you in. I love listening to old instrumental bands like the Shadows, the Ventures, the String-alongs, which is ridiculous because if you listen to the music, kind of like, what on earth are you doing with your life by listening to this every day? But I just love the feeling that it gets, like kind of like old school surfing videos, like what kind of music that people used to write back in the day. That kind of, I love just like the feeling of where that puts you and what space it puts you in. But then also kind of going into new stuff, like James and I were listening to Max Richter, who's this like composer the other day, like absolutely in love with the feeling that it puts you in. Do Make Say Think, which is an incredible band that James once again has given me. And I think like that kind of is the inspiration for us is sharing music with each other and going, this would really fit like our kind of feeling. And we kind of almost relate in terms of how we write our music by saying like, oh, cool, this is kind of like on the similar like nerve or the similar vein to what we enjoy about writing music together. So the inspiration is kind of what we feel is relevant to what we're kind of trying to project ourselves.
Yeah, it's forever changing.
Yeah.
That's cool. Like honestly though, like your inspirations as an artist, okay, like I find that I also get like sort of stumped when people ask me the same question. Um, because it's not as easy to answer as you would expect. Like I actually listen to a lot of instrumental music, which is probably why I enjoyed your guys' stuff so much while I was listening to it earlier. And
Cool.
I listen to a lot of the instrumental stuff on the heavier side, which is where I draw a lot of inspiration from. But it's great.
Yeah, man, no, exactly. It's yeah, and I mean with you as well, like I'm sure you also get influenced in all sorts of different ways and listening to different. I mean, man, even like I wouldn't lie, like even if there's a pop song that I like a Dua Lipa or something, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's actually a really cool bass line, or there's this really cool sound in there that I like, and I'm just like, okay, cool. Like I like what whoever added that in, the producer, whatever that was thinking there. So that's like, I can think of something not exactly like that, but it's maybe like something that brings the energy or something like that.
Right?
So
Like inspiration can come from anywhere, irrespective of what
yeah,
genre of music you make. For me, like it also with like pop music, a lot of people think that like because I'm in a metal band, I don't associate with that kind of music. But if I enjoy a song, I enjoy it. And what I've also found is what works really well is Like a lot of pop music has really good song structures. Like there have
Yeah.
like these days, like the sort of new wave of pop, I guess, like the song structures are really interesting. And I find that I've been borrowing like the structures from those songs and then writing metal around those structures, which has been
Yeah.
very interesting.
No, definitely. I can definitely agree with that. It's also music has this weird thing of just like subconsciously, just without you knowing it. It's a subconscious.
No, that's true.
Yeah.
Before we close out, where can people find your music? Where can people actually go and find more about you guys?
We're everywhere online: YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, Deezer, SoundCloud. Yeah, we pretty much anywhere, as long as you just type our name correctly. We Indian Mynah, we spell with a Y, so it's like Yndian Mynah, and it's like the bird.
If I
Yeah.
could tell you a funny story, I made that mistake earlier, and I messaged Naz. I was like, "Bro, I can't find these dudes like anywhere. I found an actual band from Australia, but that I didn't realize called Indian Minor, but spelled with an I." And I was like, I didn't see that it was Australian. I'm like, dude, I can't find anything about these dudes. What the fuck's going on? And then I
No, that
realized
is, yeah.
I read the message wrong. I was like, oh shit, I'm dumb.
No, it's a classic mistake. I mean, the amount of times we've seen our name on a flyer or like written up in a press release or something like that. Like it's yeah, it's the old classic auto tune that gets us. But yeah, check it out on any music platforms, streaming platforms, YouTube, all of that. Yeah.
Yeah, or just follow us on Instagram and then you'll get all our links to
Yes, yeah.
everything. I think we're gonna start putting up all of our hyperlinks for our album, and then whatever your platform you prefer, it'll be available on that, and you can just kind of click on that and see. And we're also taking pre-orders for things like vinyls, and got some merch on our Spotify store at the moment as well. So yeah, just slowly growing from all different angles.
No, that's cool. It's funny that you mentioned about a stuff up on a flyer. The other day we were posted on for a festival and we were marketed as a three-piece band when there were clearly five people in the photograph of us that they posted, which was funny.
Nice, man.
And guys, thank you so much for taking the time to have a chat with me today. It's been an absolute blast. I really had fun chatting to you guys. And I'm stoked to see you
Yeah.
guys in Durban. I'll definitely send through the details of some of the guys who have been organizing shows this side and bringing people through. And hopefully we can make something happen.
Yeah,
Oh,
man.
thank you so much. Let's get to that Shark Tank.
Yeah, let's get to the shark fest.
Thanks so much, man. It's lovely chatting to you.
All the best, guys. Hope you have a fantastic evening.